Do you want to change the way you talk to yourself? Do you suffer from negative thoughts? Being pessimistic, feeling hopeless? Well, today I'm going to talk about some ways of changing the way we talk to ourselves and becoming more positive. Now, one of the first things we need to do is to become aware of our internal dialogue. Notice the way we talk to ourselves. If you notice that you're in the habit of criticizing yourself, if you're thinking about doing something new, we can talk ourselves out of it. Things like, I'm never going to be able to do that. How am I going to do that? I can't do things like that. So you're maybe aiming for something positive that you want to change in your life, but you can talk yourself out of it. And if you're anxious and pessimistic, it's very easy to get caught in a vicious circle of talking yourself out of doing something about it and trying to change. Now, one of the first things we need to do is to become aware of that self-talk. Notice the things you say to yourself habitually. And when we notice those things, when you become aware of the way you talk to yourself, then we can change it. So, one of the ways we can get into the habit of being more positive with our self-talk is every time you catch yourself being critical, is to flip around that critical voice and think, what would be the opposite of that thought? So if you have those types of thoughts where, I can never do that, or just being very critical to yourself, of calling yourself names, what would be the opposite? If you call yourself stupid, worthless, idiot, whatever it is, what would be the opposite of that? That you're intelligent, that you're worthwhile, that you can do it. So just being in the habit of flipping those negative thoughts when we catch ourselves, the more that we flip those negative thoughts and see the positive side, the more that will become a new habit. Now, I know that's easier said than done, because the thing is, if we're in the habit of negative self-talk and you start trying to flip it and say the opposite, you're not going to believe it, because you're going to, yeah, well, that's not going to work. How is that going to work? I can't even do that, and blah, 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 blah. So, firstly, I'd like to think that, would you talk to someone else that way? Sometimes we're our own harshest critics. So, if you wouldn't talk to someone else that way, why do we do it to ourselves? Maybe because we're aware of all the things that we say to ourselves. We're aware of all the lies we tell ourselves. All the times we haven't followed through with something. All the times we've said to ourselves, we're going to change, and then we don't. But why? Because we're caught in a vicious cycle of negative self-talk. Once we're aware of this negative self-talk, another thing you can do is you can continue saying the same thing to yourself. You can say all the horrible things that you say to yourself in a critical way, but change the voice. Notice the tone of the voice. Is it a nice and soothing and helpful kind of voice? Or is it harsh and critical and nagging? And where does the voice come from? I know really it's in your head, but imagine it's an external person. Where are they talking from? Are they to one side, talking in your ear, to the other ear, behind you, just in the center of your head? If you notice where that internal voice is coming from, every time when it's critical, I'd like you to experiment with changing the location of that voice. What happens if you move it further away and it gets quieter and quieter? So you can say the same negative things, but just move it further away. Does it have the same impact? That will never work. That will never work. And move it further and further away. And just see what happens. Another thing we can do is just play with the volume. Imagine in your mind you have a slider. So you can continue the same negative self-talk that you've always done. And as that nagging voice starts, well, this will never work. And why? I don't know even where I'm trying. And just turn down until you can't hear that nagging voice anymore. It whispers until it fades away. Another thing we can do with this negative voice is to change it into a silly voice. So imagine the same negative voice and whatever it is that you say to yourself when you're talking yourself out of doing something, or you're criticizing yourself for something you've done in the past. Change that negative voice to something silly. Change it to a cartoon character or
a high helium voice and change it to something silly, and you can still criticize yourself,
but do it in a weird, cartoony, strange, silly voice until it just becomes ridiculous. Or you can change it into a soft and relaxing voice. And so you can still criticize yourself and say, you'll never be able to do that, or you should just give up now. But in a nice, soothing voice. And does it still have that same impact? So we can change how close that voice is, move it further away, change the volume, change the tone of voice, change the type of voice to something ridiculous. And notice, does it have the same effect? And now when you've changed and played around with that voice, and notice that you're in control, you can decide because it's your own voice. So you may as well change it to something more positive and encourage yourself. Imagine if you were giving advice to someone else, someone that you love. Would you be so harsh and critical? How would you encourage someone? How would you sound? What would be the expression on your face when you're trying to encourage someone to feel good? And know that you can do it. And you can believe in yourself. That's right. Now, another thought experiment we can do with your negative voice is if you imagine every time a negative thought pops up, imagine on a whiteboard and you're wiping that whiteboard away. So imagine the negative words popping up on the board and you can just erase them. Notice them fade and pop into nothing. So every time it starts to nag, imagine imagine that negative word or that negative voice just disappearing. And once you've played around with those voices, you can start to really get into the habit of being more positive. And you can say to yourself, I can do it. I can change. I can become more positive. Now, if you use affirmations and you say to yourself that you're becoming more positive, that you are more positive, that you're more capable, of feeling confident, of feeling relaxed under stress, if you don't act like it, you're never going to believe it. So your actions have to follow through with those thoughts. And the more we get in a positive feedback loop, your positive thoughts backing up positive actions, to change for the positive. The more we do this, the better it will become. The better your life will become. And you can change what we focus on. The more you get in the habit of noticing the positive things around you, taking time to be grateful for the things you have in your life. Now, we can't help if stressful situations happen, if what we might think of as negative situations happen in life, but we can change how we respond and how we feel about it. So please practice these exercises with changing your negative thoughts into more positive ones, and start to change your outlook, noticing the more positive things around you, and notice how your life can change for the better.